давних времен человек создавал границы, строил крепости и возводил стены, пока не пришла простая идея — сотрудничать выгодно для всех. И появились дороги, великие пути, на суше, на море. Были воздвигнуты мосты между культурами, по которым двигались люди и их идеи. Но расстояние все еще считали в неделях и месяцах. Человек не мог перемещаться быстрее лошади. И тогда дороги стали железными. Поезда сократили недели до дней, а дни до часов. Государства открыли границы. Люди научились путешествовать, а компании смогли торговать еще быстрее, перевозя мегатонны грузов ежедневно. Железные дороги победили расстояние. И теперь, когда прогресс не остановить, дороги должны стать цифровыми и победить время. Представьте будущее, где вместо стран — города, а между ними нет границ, только мосты. Представьте будущее, где транспорт меняет технологии, а не наоборот. Будущее, где скорость — это новая валюта. И сотрудничать все так же выгодно для всех. Торговец Марко Поло 3 года шел в Китай по Великому Шелковому пути. Представьте будущее, где он доедет поездом за 1 день. Мы здесь, чтобы дать дорогу к этому будущему. Добро пожаловать на Международный транспортно-логистический форум про движение 1520.
Для приветственного слова
For the welcoming word, we invite Director General, Head of Board of Directors of Russian Railways, Oleg Belozerov. Ladies and gentlemen, I heartily welcome you in the International Transport Logistics Forum MOTION.1520, which this year we decided to dedicate to the perspectives of the seamless space 1520 and consider this topic in all various aspects. I have a telegram from President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. Dear friends, I welcome you in the International Promotion 1520 Forum, uniting representatives of the transport industry, large logistics and insurance companies, strategic investors and experts from many countries. Your forum enjoys high international authority and is a renowned platform for an open, productive dialogue in different issues related to railways improvement and transport complex improvement. Implementation of modern approaches and technologies is important, and it is also important that your meetings every time serve new formats of cooperation and allow to find specific initiatives focused on such prospective projects as international transport corridors between East and West, North and South, Arctic, Siberia and Asia. I am sure that being focused on the result and practical implementation of innovative breakthrough ideas will promote success of the forum, improvement of its position in the industry calendar. I wish you fruitful work, implementation of your plans, and all the best. Head of government, the Prime Minister of Russia, Mr. Medvedev, underlined that Russian Railways is one of the largest companies in the world, and its efficient operation defines national economic growth, business activities, competitive advantages of domestic exports, and of course railways and required by people. So government pays a lot of attention to this industry, and currently we are digitalizing our railways, and this year our forum offers intense discussions, and strategic sessions will allow our participants to find answers to the burning questions they have in the Eurasian space. And I believe that this is going to be very productive dialogue, and solutions that you come up with will be put in place and will give a new boost to the railways development. Also, I have welcoming words from Ms. Matviyenko, from Mr. Volodin of State Duma, and Mr. Dietrich, Minister of Transport. This forum is the place where people from dozens of countries got together to discuss the issues of this industry. We're happy to welcome our international partners. Your opinions and arguments are very valuable for us in this huge base of 1520 that unites largest economies of Eurasia. I would like to welcome industry experts, scientists, media representatives. Your well-thought assessments allow us to better understand the processes that are taking place. All of us here are interested in developing the industry, transborder interaction. So we thank you for your preparedness to this dialogue. Dear colleagues, in the framework of the forum, we'll have 12 sessions. I am sure that all the discussions will be very productive and will find answers for the questions that are relevant. In the plenary session, we have one of the most relevant topics, development of railway transport and its connection to the global processes. Global economy doesn't care for borders, and on the international agenda we have, however, local voices that are raised. Competing or cooperating, that's the dilemma of our first discussion. And here we have a whole range of issues. How can we benefit from globalization without destroying local economies? How can we combine transparency of digital platforms and global exchange with the security and safety requirements? These are just examples of those questions. There are no versatile answers, so we really need to look for the answers that would satisfy everyone, and this is the main principle of the Russian railways. All the modern challenges, be that digitalization or seamless logistics, transborder interoperability, interaction of machinery, all of that can only find solutions with the continuous interaction of the parties and stakeholders. And we are in the very beginning of our way regarding cargo transportation. So tomorrow we will also be discussing solutions for certain external shocks. We can say that the best protection from volatility is being agile and making decisions in a fast way. Seamless interaction has a very high potential regarding passenger transport in the international railway tourism and transport solutions for the cities. These important topics will also be discussed. All forum discussions are connected to the tasks of development of railway transport and logistics. How should we invest? Where should we take resources from? How can we use the technological opportunities to the best? How can we improve our leadership as the most environmentally friendly means of transport? And what's the price of green technology? So of course we'll consider all that. We live in the time of fast changes. Intellectual interaction is being put into practical solutions. Just last week in this very place we were discussing perspectives of developing interaction in the railway field with the African countries. And what Vladimir Putin said is that turnover with Africa, between Africa and Russia, and the volume of $20 billion, that's not enough, and we have a huge potential for further growth. So if a partnership will have new regions reopened, so that's a very good chance. So I suggest we face the challenges proactively, break stereotypes, defend our positions, and this will help us to be always ready to any external factors. I wish us all fruitful work, and I'm sure that Promotion 1520 will become yet another step in finding new forms of putting in place every achievement that we have. For the welcoming word, we invite Deputy Governor of the Krasnodar Region, Mr. Voronovsky.
Доброе утро, уважаемые дамы.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, participants of the International Logistics Forum called PRO Movement 1520. Let me, on behalf of the Governor of Krasnodar Region, welcome all of you in our region at our Olympic city of Sochi and read the welcoming address on behalf of the Governor of Krasnodar Region. Dear friends, I welcome all the friends and participants of the International Logistics and Transport Forum PRO Movement 1520. It is a special honor and special significance for us that our region has become a traditional site for meeting main players of the railway and transport system, involved in development of many things, including the high-speed transportation. This time, again, the status of this forum and the scope of the agenda is very impressive. The system of railways is the strategically important field of economic development of Russia. Today, great investment is pulled into this area. New infrastructure, new lines, new standards and levels of comfort are provided. And for our region, as one of the most dynamic regions in Russia, it is very important that we create new hubs and new lines and improve infrastructure, introduce new services and new levels of services for our passengers. Of course, it is very important for us to understand which way are we going in future and define our strategic and tactical ways of development. And in this relation, it is very important to exchange opinions, experience, and I wish you fruitful work here. Head of Administration of Krasnodar Region, Governor Kondratyev. Thank you very much.
Уважаемые дамы и господа,
Ladies and gentlemen, for participation in the plenary session for future of Area 1520 compete or cooperate, where do national transport interests converge. We invite the Chief Executive Officer, Chairman of the Executive Board, Joint Stock Company Russian Railways, Oleg Belozerov. Senior Vice President, Container Logistics and Intermodal, CMA, CGM, Ms. Joël Gentil. Development Director, Head of Analytical Sector for the Government of the Russian Federation, Vladislav Anishenko. Development Director of Russia Hupek Intermodal, Alberta Grisane. Senior Vice President, Business Development Eurasia, DB Uwe Loschner. General Director of the Korean Office in Russia, of Hukwan Cho. Head of the Board of JEFCO Group, Chairman of the Management Board, Luke Nadal. President of the Institute for the Development of Transport Systems, Alexander Sinyov. Moderator of this plenary session is General Director of the InfraNews agency, Alexey Bezborodov.
Уважаемые коллеги, добрый день. Мы приветствуем в Сочи коллег, их ведомства, компании, вся Россия, вся Евразия, от Марселя до Сеула и Пекина. О чем бы мы ни говорили сегодня, здесь, на других площадках форума, мы будем говорить о связанности континента, грузовой, пассажирской, логистической, связанности во всех смыслах этого слова. И первоочередная задача связанности, первоочередная цель связанности – это транзит. Какова ситуация сегодня с транзитом, как он развивается, как он растет, это мы и будем обсуждать. Коротко поясню, как мы построим нашу работу. Я дам слово каждому из находящихся на сцене и буду следить за временем, потому что строгие организаторы. И у меня будет вопрос для каждого из участников, плюс, естественно, будет один общий вопрос, на который попрошу участников также ответить. Это в чем видится вам перспектива и что в наибольшей степени мешает достичь результатов в транзите, то есть какие положительные, какие отрицательные существуют факторы в нашем развитии, в развитии нашего транзита. Первый вопрос Олегу Валентиновичу Белозерову, генеральному директору.
So the first question is given to the Chief Executive Officer, Chairman of the Executive Board, Joint Stock Company Russian Railways, Oleg Belozerov. So it is quite clear that when we're discussing transit and new approaches in operations, we need to provide for physical and administrative environment for function of thousands of units and entities and bodies in the economy, and define the aspects of success of our railways operations. So when we speak about different stages in the history of development of railways in Russia, we see that there was a great breakthrough that has happened at the time of bank construction, computerization, digitization, or the new rolling stock introduction, and we need to introduce the new logistics system today at a high level together with Kazakhstan, Belarus, and our friends from Asia Pacific, from South Asia, from China, and looking ahead for 20-30 years in future. We need to set the foundation for future development. What sort of foundation, how to lay it, how to develop transit as the main agent of connectivity across our continent. So this is the question I'm asking. You have set the objective of increasing the transit operations by 2024, and what Russian railways can offer in this, and what can you expect from your partners, and what are the barriers that you can see in this development? Thank you very much, dear colleagues. You know, I agree with this question because I think that we have to think big and aim high, and not only achieve these high standards and objectives, but even jump above it. Now, this is the way we have been working over recent history of the Russian railways, according to the program, which is not only the master plan, the program for our development, which is the public order written together with lots of stakeholders, and it is very ambitious. And I think that this year we can already see some quite satisfactory results of realization of this program. At some events, when I was given the floor, I spoke about the concept of the black swan. This is the catchphrase which we use when we want to speak about risks and some uncalculated, unpleasant situations. So this year was the year of a number of black swans, but nevertheless, our industry has coped with this challenge, and we are moving ahead, implementing in full our investment program. We are right now preparing for different events, and whatever we have agreed with participants of the investment program, which is the unique project of buying the locals and the new passenger cars and development of suburban trains, digitization, and all these new areas of development provide us with quite good results. And taking this chance, I would like to thank all the participants of this process, machine builders, representatives of companies that supply us with equipment, with products that we use. And I think that this is the breakthrough which we can really be happy with. And our figures right now show that we are a little bit behind the plan in cargo handling, but nevertheless, I always give such an example. We measure our cargoes in tonnage, and traditionally our cargo were the oil and coal. Correspondingly, tons were our main measurements. But right now we have the breakthrough in 13 to 14% of surplus in container operations. And these are the container operations of handling goods. And this is a lighter segment and quite more profitable. So the paradox is that right now we feature a very serious surplus in volumes of cargo handling through container operations. But is it possible to rely only on one segment in the entire field of development? Of course not. So we have to move ahead across different segments and introduce new technologies across all areas of this program. And I would mention right now legislation as one of the core areas for our Eurasian environment of cooperation, where we faced one of the challenges when we planned the construction of the new gauge to Vienna. This is the project which is very long-term, and it is so we have to shift the timelines even further on into future, and we discuss this, but the discussions take lots of time. And I think that for the railways, it is very important to be very flexible, to be very prompt in our response to the changing environment. And I think that we don't have to compete, but we have to complement each other, our efforts, our opportunities, and I mean even complementing each other with other modes of transportation, motor transportation. And speaking about figures, last year we handled 550,000 transit containers. This year we will raise this figure to 600,000 containers, and by the year 2025, 1,700,000 containers. And I'm sure that these targets given in this slide will be achieved. Perhaps we will jump even higher, because we have all the prerequisites for that. We work together with our FESCO and PARS partners in sea transportation, and the cargo from Korea and Japan travels by sea to Vostochny port, and then by railway to St. Petersburg, and again by sea continues to Gdansk. This is a very interesting and convenient service. The demand for it is big, and I'm sure that similar trends will continue. As for OTLK, which is the segment in which we every year see progress and report on records that we set. Well, the unique guideline in this are the trains coming from China to Verona and to Luxembourg. So in this route from Asia to Europe, we are very competitive, and the friends, the colleagues present here are here not by chance, because their contribution and their assistance is very great. So in this connection, we realized the Excel project, which we deal in with China, and we move forward technologically in this respect. As of today, the transport, railway transport, involves also cooperation with motor vehicle concerns. Quite a number of years ago, it would have been a great surprise to hear this, but right now this is just daily cooperation. What about Agri-Express segment? It starts from Moscow, Kaluga Oblast, and then moves to China. And along this route, the train is given some additional flat wagons that are moving in the same destinations. And for the Chinese export providers, this is a great opportunity for growth. Agri-Express has started in the end of September for the first time, and it took it 15 days just to travel to China. It delivered the Russian flour to China. And the schedule of this shipment is planned for 10 years ahead. This is a wonderful, promising area. Another project is Intermodal. We realized it together with the FESCO company. At the moment, we are testing transportation from Moscow to Vladivostok and Yokohama. It is all electronically managed and planned, and we rely on very close interaction with our customs. And as for figures that we have maintained, they are really record-setting. Several years ago, we remember that containers were stuck in the Far East at the ports, and because of very long procedures. But right now, the economy on time is really serious, and this is a great improvement. That's why more and more users enjoy this service. We develop new routes, as I said. We think that intermodular operations will involve our extension of the 1520 gauge. Right now we are only planning this to Vienna and are at the stage of discussing ecological, environmental issues associated with this project. But the project is very promising, and we invite other countries also to consider introduction of our gauge, so that to prompt further development of infrastructure and cooperation. And in this respect, I should mention cooperation of Kaliningrad with our Belarus colleagues and with others, with shorten the sea shipment of cargo from China to Kaliningrad and onward to Europe. So we use all the different algorithms and combination of different modes for advancement. And over recent time, we have started a number of other discussions regarding a scope of other services that will advance our railway industry into the higher levels. And I see a very high potential for that.
Valentinovich.
Thank you, Mr. Belozerov. Well, as a country, as a nation, and as a company, despite the way which we went through with container transit, we still have to learn many things, and we have still good examples to look up. And there are big operators and we need to learn from their mistakes and from their success. And I think one of the largest companies in container business in the world is CMA CGM, and it is one of the most open companies. Their managers are very nice and open, and they talk to the media and to the clients and to everyone. So my question is to Joël Gentil, Senior Vice President, Container Logistics, Intermodal, CMA CGM. So CMA CGM is one of the largest companies and container lines in the world, and your future is connected to integrated products in different means of transport. Also, CMA CGM is one of the largest companies that invests in Russia, and they actually own 2 terminals here. So what investments are possible in the future, and would you establish your own operator company? So what's the prospects for Russia, please?
Thank you for the nice comments about CMA CGM. Indeed, the Intermodal is a very precise target for our company. Today, just to give you an indication, we carry about 9 million TEUs on Intermodal, and 1/3 is carried by rail. So rail is definitely a strategic target for the group all over the world, and more specifically in Russia. Why is it a target? For many reasons. First one is that rail is an environmental way of transportation, and we all have to push as much as we can to switch volume from truck to rail. That's point number one. Point number two is, if you look at Russia, we have 2 types of business. Basically, you have the international coming from outside and going into Russia, and then we have from Baltic to Moscow, basically, and from Refex, Russian Far East to Moscow. That's one activity, and this activity is growing. And then there is another one that is starting and that we believe will be more and more active and growing more and more. This is what we call the in-transit volume from China to Europe via Russia. We are very optimistic in the development of this activity. And this is the reason why the group has decided to invest in Russia. We have started to invest by acquiring a rail company called Logoper, where we have our partners. This is a partnership, and with our partners we are considering developing our presence not only as rail operator but also as maybe terminal operator, because we believe this is a strategic place. So we are definitely very optimistic about the development of Russia volume, because there will be more and more containerization, because we want to offer to our customer from China to Europe a different product. Of course, one could believe that we are going to compete against our shipping volume, but that's not at all the case. It's not a competition, because the one that will use the rail, the transit from China to Europe, are maybe not today using shipping. Maybe they are using plane. So we believe there is a product that will be a bit more expensive than shipping, but much shorter, and probably much longer than air business, but much more cheap. So we believe there is a in-between product that we are going to push and that we will develop, because we want to offer to our customers from China a shipping solution, a rail solution, and an air solution, because you probably know that we have acquired a logistic company early this year called Seva Logistics, and Seva Logistics will also be very much involved in developing. Now, when we look at the challenges, because of course this is not going to come alone, there is a lot to be done still, and the challenges we see for the rail activity in Russia will be first to grow the capacity with the volume, because if we want to move, for example, the in-transit volume from 600,000 units as it is today to 1.7, we will need additional capacity from RZD. We will probably need also to have some more modern rail terminals, because we are not sure that the present rail terminals will be efficient enough or enough to cope with this increase in volume. And we will also probably have to address also a cost issue. When we talk about cost issue, we have two different reality. We have from Baltic to Moscow, where we compete against truck, and when we compete in truck, we have to tackle this problem of cost, and we will push as much as we can to transfer volume from road to rail. But you know, when you have to convince customers, you have to talk to them about service, cost, and environment. And sometimes you start by cost, then after by service, and last by environment. So that's one issue we have to address. And same for from Far East to Moscow, the reflex to Moscow volume, where we have to address also the cost issue. And last but not least, for the in-transit, we believe we also have to look at those aspects of costs. So we will be definitely continue to invest in Russia, because we believe in the development in this activity. We believe there is a new product, and we believe in rail.
Спасибо, господин Gentil.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gentil. Actually, as for railway transit, it's the largest growing segment, and it's been like that for 5 years, and it will go on for at least a decade. And if we look at it and how it happened and why Russian railways, together with the operators, became one of the top 10 players between China and Europe, if we take container transportation, 2-3%, yes, that's top 10 globally. And you can say it's about devaluation, and you will be only partially right, because it's kind of banal, because transit is a service. And when in 2014, 2015, ruble exchange rate went down and oil prices went down, no one offered transit service as something new. It was already in place, and this service was marketed and it was in demand. And transit is a self-feeding system where new professionals create services, their followers learn from their experience, and this is offered to the market. And actually today, even our colleagues and neighbors from Kazakhstan, from Belarus, they create new products. Finally, Kazakhstan Railways, they managed to provide feeder shipments to the Caspian region. And it's not about competing, it's not about long routes with all the partners of Russian railways. It's a situation where we apply efforts together. When we learned to do transit, and Kazakhstan started doing something a bit different, and still the price will be quite high there, and their logistics is much more complicated than anywhere else. And moreover, such competition will be very positive for us as well, because we are going to develop our rail, and Russian railways will offer new services for transit. And I think these services will be in demand generally in the years to come, where we expect growth by 4 times. Russia has a lot to offer in response to any infrastructural challenges. For example, private rail meridian, there marketing people have a lot to do there in order to offer a full-fledged service. But together with that, we understand that this rail will create intersection with the existing railways in the south of Moscow, and motor transport will also can be integrated to the Russian railways hubs, and cargo owners will be able to use Russian railways. And of course, Oktyabrskaya railway will be unloaded after new bypass railways constructed, and this will allow clients from China to transport their freight to Finland to Europe much cheaper. And it's my opinion as observer. I don't know if the operator manages with these challenges, but copes with these challenges, but I think the trend is that cargo owners from Europe and Asia will understand that geography, speed and cost will all of that will improve and will become one of the top 5 companies between Europe and China, and will be Cosca and Myers, and will be next to them without engaging other freight owners from all parts of the world. It's a challenge for Russian railways, but they will do it. And actually, now we have a very important player as a government, as our state, and they invest a lot into infrastructure and different infrastructural projects. And we understand, as any nation that experiences large transformation, we always have issues of healthcare and education, but also everyone wants new roads, everyone wants a lot of improvements, an airport next to their home with lots of flights. So I have a question to Mr. Onyshenko, head of analytical center for the government of the Russian Federation. What are the basic approaches, main approaches in the transport policy of Russia? So what are the trends? So what can you say about that?
Добрый день.
Good morning. Thank you for your question. Perhaps I will just ignore what I have prepared in my presentation. I will just answer the question. The state, to some extent, has expected the flock of black swans of this year. And I'm saying so because there had been several orders by our president that were given to the country about a year and a half ago. And in our field, there was no prescription of which airport to build or which railway line to extend. But the main objectives were very clear. And it shows that the state has changed its position regarding the Russian Railways company's operation and the target set for 2024. When we remember a year ago, the main objective was to design the complex integrated plan for development of infrastructure, but for the year 2024, and very few people were thinking about what would be beyond this deadline. And after the construction of the infrastructure, there will be new challenges and new objectives. And this year, for example, we started thinking about future beyond 2024. Of course, construction of railway lines is one of the main elements of the development of transport in the country and economy in the country. Cannot just be stopped in 2024. We have to look ahead to the years of 2027 and beyond. And even those projects that are supposed to be very fast, because we are impatient, we really look forward to their realization. For example, digitalization of the industry still will take years and years, particularly when we consider the scope and geography of our country, the scope of improvements that we need, and the challenges that the state sees and analyzes when setting the objectives for infrastructure advancement. And when we speak about the long-term program of the Russian Railways company, it's a great response to this above-mentioned objectives and long-term aims set by the government. Then we need to plan not only in the mid-term mode, but in the long-term mode, and we are forming additional package of different proposals, which, in case proper investment is available, we could plan the integration of new elements into the integrated plan to the year 2030 in a number of branches of the economy that quite often not directly linked to our developments. For example, the development of the Northern Sea route. There are plans till the year 2025, but we understand that 2030 is not our final deadline for the development of railways in the north. We have to look ahead, and in a similar manner, we have to plan ahead development in Europe, development in Asia, and we need to find some modern solution to certain challenges when we think about developing the infrastructure, not only for Russian railways, but also for other modes of transportation, in particular areas, for example, Ban-Transsib, main line, or some other transport corridors, so that to enhance additional cargo flows and meet the parameters set for making our shipment faster, handling faster, and interaction of federal, regional, and local projects more intensive. We speak about local lines. We need the more reliable networks that will allow to cut costs in the first mile. Under current situation, this looks like the possible challenge in future, which will not allow to realize the entire transit potential. That's why we have to think about it. Another trend which we observe not only for the first year and which will of course develop in future is to some extent the states stepping aside from the field of pulling investment into this field and involvement of other funds. So at the moment the state or public funds make less than 50% of the entire investment. Other parts are contributed by private and corporate investors. And the budget that would go beyond the corporate management of investment is not available. So, for example, in the construction and development of ports and some control units without which the transit is not possible. So this is the area which calls for the preparatory work for raising funds and investments for the period starting in 2025. But these projects can even start in 2021. So the state is not ready to provide public funds only. So it gives the way for other opportunities for other investments through PPP initiatives and other types and instruments of financial support like leasing schemes and such. And another thing I would like to mention here, which for me is equally important, is the development of improved performance of transportation and services, and this is very closely connected with digitalization, improved performance of human resources, investment into quality of human resources, their skills, new skills that will serve the digital economy, digital services, which will provide for the performance of the entire company, because investment into the human resources development will provide for higher competencies and new skills of the personnel for the years and years to come. Thank you very much.
We should not forget that Russian Railways staff training is one of the oldest and well established. But actually, in our development, in our relationships, we won't be able to do a lot without our foreign partners. So now we will ask them And the question is to Alberto Grisone, Development Director of Russia, Hypak Intermodal. It's no secret that still there's a certain disbalance in transportation from China to Europe and back. So what points of growth do you see, and how transit transportation can be developed, how we could minimize idling time, and etc.?
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for the question. Nice question. We personally think that the best way for trying to create a better balancement of the transportation is to create the possibilities and opportunities to link the different industrial clusters that are located between Europe and China, or China and Europe. The unbalancement of the traffic is absolutely a reality. This is 1 to 5, up to 1 to 10. I'm talking about general numbers, so not what is specifically on the railway case currently. That's why historically also the shipping line prices and the overseas prices are very much different in the two directions. And I think that the railway opportunity has an extremely good chance to develop at the moment that is not seeing the transit as a pure exclusive transit from A to B, but this is considering everything in a sort of big and long corridor vision. Because if we look at the map and we start from Italy, going via Germany or via the Vienna routing, and we cross the various countries, we will discover every 500, 600 kilometers extremely important industrial clusters with extremely important population area, with need of consuming goods, industrial goods, and a lot of references. And this is more or less what in our company we are trying usually to do. So trying to create, eliminate barriers and to create possibilities to connect the various industrial areas. Therefore, just very briefly, we are able, with a system which is linking a lot of hubs everywhere. We are creating at this moment 130 block trains yearly, and last year we transported approximately 1.8 million TEUs overall. We think, also coming more into your question, that the development of the logistics is a top importance for any country. And that has to be achieved, becoming modern, efficient, productive, fast and reliable. If imagine seems to be so long ago, we are talking only about 130 years ago, we could cross the Alps with the post and the horses and changing the horses. Now we have extremely efficient, modern and expensive solution. But we need to make them usual and user-friendly. We need competitiveness, innovation, because the railway need a lot of innovation. We need to digitalize the system, and we need to increase the productivity. We need to see the locomotive and the wagons that are able to run on the railway network with the same freedom like a truck is going on the road. Basically, a Russian truck with a Russian driver can start from Moscow and arriving in Lisbon without any problem, any hindrance, except for the customs problem. With the locomotive, if you exclude the problem of the gauge, we will find so many difficulties to do something similar and so many costs that need a lot of increase of productivity and competitiveness. It has been said that the petrol cost went low, the cost of the petrol for the trucks going low, and at this moment we see a gap between the railway and the modality of the road, which is increasing by 25%. How we can try to compete against that? We need basically efficiency, innovation, and productivity. The same three languages that other modalities are talking, and the railway must to streamline a lot more for that. I must say that here in Russia, RZD is one of the really leading company in terms of efficiency and increase of productivity of locomotives and wagons, because the number of kilometers that are run by the locomotives and by the wagons in Russia is in Europe something which is simply a dream. We need to digitalize the system. We must to become extremely quick and user-friendly. Who want to access on the railway transportation of the cargo must arrive to the point to have a simple access like everybody of us when we book with Aeroflot or with any flying company a place, we need 3 minutes. And by the railway, we are, generally speaking, despite a lot is ongoing and a lot is done, but we are still far away. We need also to create a system that when we go between Europe and China, we do not have 10 kilos of paper accompanying a train with the risk of losing paper and creating big inefficiencies at the various border crossing points. And then productivity. We need to make the train longer and heavier. Once again, Europe must learn from Russia from that point of view, because we are struggling to arrive at 740 to 800 meters length, talking about international European trains, and in Russia, and 2,000 tons, when in Russia they are struggling for 9 to 11,000 tons. So again, something where we need to create anyway an harmonization. We must create harmonization of the rules, how to transport a train and how to create a train parameters. We need to create harmonization of the rules together with our friends of the customs clearance. And last but not least, we need to arrive, as I said before, to have the locomotives that are running everywhere with the same freedom of the trucks. Therefore, I mention as big dream even Russian RZD running along the European countries. The combined transport is a future-oriented system. And if we look at the target, 2 million TEUs in transit along the Trans-Siberian route within 2025, I'm also convinced that it will be much more than achieved. And the target of the European community, 30% of the transportation cargo on the railway. This is something that it is not simply helping to make our world with less pollution and to have a better environmental situation and reducing footprint. But this is also creating industry, is creating working system, is creating job force. What all the government and all the countries need today is to create job, give again to the population certainty of having their own money and their own capability. And the railway and the intermodal transport is one of the best possible answer for all of that. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Я бы хотел...
I would like to note that Russian Railways company, according to the international ranking, is one of the most ecologically efficient from the point of view of CO2 emissions. It is most efficient, eco-friendly compared to many other operators in China and Europe and in many other parts of the world. So it is giving the smallest footprint in terms of emissions. And this is not only our opinion, it is the opinion of the international rating organization. So, and that's why we hear what you say about the importance of developing new approaches and technologies. And yet another important major partner for Russian Railways is the Deutsche Bahn company, and I'm giving the floor to Uwe Leuschner, General Director of the DB Cargo Russia, with the question of how do you see the potential for your operation in Russia, and which services with new solutions can be offered to the users. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to Sochi. It is not the first time that I'm here. Every year we speak about cooperation, we speak about learning a little bit from each other about what a railway is, as the industry. So in fact, it is 80 years ago when the first railway transport operations started in Europe, and today we know that railway is still one of the most advanced areas of the development of the economy and society, providing new services and new realities in freight operations, but also in passenger services. And today, Russian railways is the transport mode, which again is very important and promising in terms of reduction of emissions and ecological impact. So when we compare the modern system and the older system, then we understand that the old and the new are bridged by the 1520 forum. No matter which political systems we belong to, no matter which other differences we have, still we have to foster this bridge and maintain it. In Germany, we also discussed our opportunities, and thank you for your questions, because we think that we do not do sufficiently to satisfy all the demands for cooperation between Russia and Europe and in Germany. And what I mean here is that we need more responsibility, we need more thinking about how to cooperate, and 157 billion euros is planned by Europe, by Germany, to in particular Deutsche Bahn, to invest in Russia. And I think that this is a great promise, because when we plan the better bridge or better corridor between East and West, we need to try our best, even though the situation is changing in China and many other countries. We need to think proactively about what we can offer each other. How can we jointly advance our cooperation? And today I would like to make a proposal to start some sort of an alliance which will start in Europe and which will embrace also Asia. We just heard that this is the dream of the OPLC, who are dreaming of the locals from Russia move around Europe. And we need to think of how to link it technologically, but also legally. Legally, it is more challenging, but technologically, we will cope. We will define certain parameters of quality. Our partners from OTLC 2 years ago already showcased their initiative of introducing the 1520 index. This is the first parameter which can be also extended across a number of other parameters and processes, including digitalization, cargo handling, multimodular solutions. We can, for example, offer our customers in China 3 different options of transportation of containers within 10 days from central China to Hamburg, for example, or any other destination, which would not be very expensive. So 16 days would be the travel time, which will be cost effective, and more discount operations like 22 days. So there are different opportunities for defining different timelines for such operations and services, and balancing them with discounts. And I think that this is the alliance I mentioned, this is the area for the alliance, and it will be open for whoever wants to join it. Whoever wants it, whoever needs it, whoever is capable of cooperation. Of course, this is the topic just offered here as food for thought. But we do need cooperation, and cooperation does not exclude competition. Competition which pushes us to become better, which prompts advancement of our products, because in the end of the day, we are the part of the service providing industry, the area which provides services to other branches of the economy, different enterprises and physical persons. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I just wanted to note that the subsidies and development of only 3 routes is not sufficient. But when we speak about bigger horizons and new bridges between Russia and China, then they will open new routes. There will be one more railway bridge, which will be not only for regular cargo, but container goods as well in future. So there will be bigger and smaller routes, and our union could be even the alliance. But the most remote destination, when we speak about transit routes, mentioned by Oleg Belozerov today, is the route between South Korea with different transit to Дальневосточный, to Far East ports. And I give the floor to the representative of the South Korean Corporation in Russia, Chor. How do you see the transit development for transportation to Russia and from Russia across to Europe, and which is more favorable route?
Okay. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for the insightful question, which I'm very glad to answer. If you allow me, I will answer the question in Korean, which is my own native language, so that I can deliver the message more precisely. Okay, we have Vera, my assistant. Okay, the lady. 유럽, 아시아, 특히 한국에서 시베리아 횡단철도를 이용해서 유럽으로 가는 노선의 그 물동량들은 사실 국가 경제, 그리고 무역, 그리고 국가의 정책에 의해서 크게 좌우되는 것이 현실입니다.
So what can I say about Trans-Siberian Railway? And as for the factors that influence it, these are challenges in the world economy, changes in international trade, and state policy. According to statistics for the recent 8 years, cargo transportation from China through Kazakhstan to Europe, container transportation, increased by 200 times. The main factors that had impact on these figures are Chinese state policy, One Belt, One Way, and growth of the Chinese economy and growth of Chinese trade. Also, as for Korean cargo transportation from Korea through Transip, also changes in Korean economy and changes in state policy had their impact as well. Before Trans-Korean and Trans-Siberian lines get connected, Korean Trans-Siberian transportation will be influenced by such factors as changes in Korean economy and trade, state policy, and the ability to distribute wagons in the most favorable periods, cost of transportation, and cooperation with companies that are involved in maritime transportation. And in case these factors, in these fields we have good results, I think the volume of transportation via Trans-Siberian line will increase as well. I think I handled your question. Yes, that was the second question. Okay, thanks a lot. Because of this disruption, I couldn't get it all at once, but thanks a lot for your answers. So actually, we should understand the whole scope of this global information from Marseille to Seoul and Beijing. And the links here are large forwarder companies. And now the question is to Luc Nadal, chairman of the management board GEFCO Group. So what do you think? Development of transit transport is not only about Russia, but it's about other countries, and plus maritime transportation and dumping and differences in prices. So how can Russian routes become profitable and preferred by forwarders? So what about Eurasian multimodality?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the invitation. First of all, I would like to draw the attention of the audience about the fact that transit from China to Europe and Europe to China has been so far a brilliant success. If you think about what you have achieved during the last 5 years, it's tremendous, and I'm sure you're going to find your way for the future growth. Second, yes, it's a chain. It's made of chain links, and we need to work out on the weakest links of the chain to be successful. And to my mind, Russia is probably the most advanced country with regard rail freight, because it's in your DNA. As Alberto Grison from UPAC, interoperability does not really exist in Europe. We still have a major constraint to cross the entire Europe, technical and paperwork constraints, which does not exist within Russia, and you have the chains of this huge country. So, seen from the outside, we can say that so far, Russia is totally complying to deliver the service. When we think about the future, I would say stability and continuous improvement of all the partners. And probably Russia can take the lead to make that happen, because you rely on the weakest point of the chain, so you probably need to take that in your hand to make improvement happen. Seen from the customer, customers, they expect the promise of service to be delivered. and it's mainly about transit time, because rail is not in competition with the sea. It's not in competition with the air freight. It's in between, and customers will rely on rail if the promise is delivered. If you say it's 15 days, it has to be 15 days. It's 16, let's make it 16. The more you improve the transit time, the more customers you will gather. Because customers, they know exactly how is the trade-off between the sea, which takes quite a long time, and the air freight, which is hugely expensive, and rails in the middle. So reliability of the transit time is key, and that means to manage the bottlenecks, which today are mainly in marshalling yards, where you swap the containers from 1520 gauge to other gauge. This is probably one place of improvement. Stability means also stability in the pricing policy of the different players. When you are a customer, you put together your supply chain. So if you choose the rail 1 year, you intend to continue on rail for several years. You cannot move your supply chain from the rail to the sea and back to the rails because of rates. So we need to have sustainable rates over the time. Third point of improvement for Russia is to take the lead on the paperwork and custom clearance. That means a lot of discussions with neighboring countries to make sure that the cargo which starts its journey will go at the end of the line with no stops because of customs issues. Customers and freight forwarders, they need to know what are the rules. They need to comply with the rules, but they really need to know what is the rule, because to have your cargo stuck along the line is just a nightmare. And customers will move back to the sea if that happens. So I think that with the digitalization, a common work of all the countries involved is totally key, and I also think that it's the interest of all those countries. Belarus wants to have transit, Russia wants to organize that. For China, it is key. Silk Road Initiative is a Chinese initiative. So seen from the outside, everybody have the interest to come together on those rules, and digitalization should help, because paperwork for customers and freight forwarders is a main issue. You need to have the paperwork, the information following the train or anticipating the train. You also have proven that you were able to handle those transportation guaranteeing the safety of the cargo. Seen from JEFCO's side, we do not have any issues with the safety. 5 years ago, it was not the case, so I think there have been a lot of improvement on that. And the dream of our customers is about the track and trace. You have in Russia the system, you know exactly where your platforms are, and I think that to provide a portal to everybody, enabling freight forwarders and cargo owner to track and trace the cargo would be also a continuous improvement we can think about. So seen from the JEFCO side, the only we see what kind of improvement, let's say, we see what kind of improvement can be brought to the system. The only issue we have is about subsidies. We know that there is an imbalance between Europe and China and Europe. Some freight are subsidized, and we need to see how this will move in the future, because some customers are relying on that, some flows are relying on that, and that's probably something that need also to be discussed, and mainly with China. But overall, I think that Russia has made a tremendous job over the last 5 years, and we do not see. I am surprised about that overall success. I already said that, I think, in Vienna at 1520 event. I couldn't imagine to have so many trains running from China to Europe and Europe to China, and I do not see why to double or to triple the volumes within the next year would not be possible.
Спасибо большое, господин.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nadal. Well, actually, summarizing all of that, so everyone in China and in Europe understand perfectly well that we have an offer, a product of transit in all different ways and options, and we know what we sell, we know everything about this service. Operators, management, half of their time they spend this time in China organizing those transportations, but we have yet another task which is a bit detached, though railways are involved there as well. In construction and in approaches there's a Northern Sea route, and I have a question to Alexander Sinyov, President of Institute for the Development of Transport Systems. So what are the perspectives? Our president identified the tasks, very specific tasks for us, increasing the volume up to 80 million tons and then even 100 million tons. So what's your opinion? What will be the share of containers in this transport flow in the Northern Sea route? Would it be possible to do transit there from China to Europe and vice versa? What's your opinion?
Thank you very much. The Northern Sea route is the system which provides for diversification of supply of gas to the global market, not only via the main lines and pipelines, as we see that there are some geopolitical risks associated in this sector, but through the flexible supply of liquid gas operations as well. So the Northern Sea route will develop, and there are no doubts whether to cooperate or compete. Of course, to cooperate. Our analytical center was the consultant for railway operations and cargo flows and what needs to be done to improve the freight operations. And we have identified 5 segments for cooperation. I'm not going into detail about that. I will just mention that there are 2 main guidelines which we suggest that should be the main bridges to improvement and enlargement of transit operations globally between South Asia and Europe. So first is the development of export flows of freight, but also import flows of freight. And of course, the Russian goods, the volumes of Russian goods that travel through the seaports into Russia make the volume of $3 billion. So that involves all the shipping companies, operations, and operations of the ports. So cooperation in the direction of developing this mode of cooperation is very promising, involving Rosatom, which is one of the flagships companies in this cooperation. And what is the key to success for our partners? I would mention 3 main keys, and perhaps even number 4 as well, which follows. First of all, as we said, it is the capacity and the capability to cooperate through the strategic alliances aimed not at making life more difficult for partners, but the other way around, aimed at creation benefits and not only for partners but for customers. First of all, customers, the optimization of their costs and the improvement opportunities for decreasing these costs. This is the main area of cooperation. And the second area is the creation of technological monopolies, but not only at the person level, but at the state level. Quite often this is misinterpreted. And the third aspect, the third key to success, is something which helps not only development but also raising funds and attraction for more investment, is the reasonable protectionism on behalf of the state and the legal system. So these three keys provide for opportunity to plan and to forecast in the long-term perspective cooperation. But also these three key segments of cooperation are seen by the banking sector as very attractive, and banks also enter cooperation in developing ports, in buying new terminals, in re-engineering of terminals, equipment, and so on. So this is the main formula, and I think that we should make our steps correspondingly. First, develop our cooperation with Rosatom. Perhaps we should plan as soon as possible a meeting with them on the above-mentioned issues and areas of cooperation. The second is to provide treatment for misconceptions in the anti-monopoly antitrust policies of the state in this area, because legislation on competition should mention not only the notion of the competition-driven market, but also the notion of the integration market, which would be filled with new technologies and new players. And the third area would be to study experience of other countries in opposition to antitrust monopolies and practices. So we think that these are the main driving factors. Thank you very much.
So we have no one to learn from, and as for those approaches that we need to construct on our own account, and I would like to thank everyone that transit will increase by 4 times in the years to come, and transit will grow and develop and make us happy, and will work proactively in that area and will promote transit. And thank you very much for your feedback, for your presentations. Thank you.